I had a purpose before everybody had an opinion.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out.
You want Philly?
Chase Utley, you are the man.
You come out backyard and you try to start something, you always get your butt kicked.
The prayers have been answered.
How about those Eagles, baby?
And Rio Muto can run for days.
Can you feel what's about to happen on this field, man?
A perfect game. Roy Halladay has thrown the second perfect game in Philadelphia Phillies history.
Where do we even begin, man? I've thought about how I want to do this video multiple times, and each time I just, don't really know how to go about it, just a lot of disappointment with how things went down. But first off, want to start off, doing the right thing. Congratulations to the Arizona Diamondbacks on making it to the World Series. They're very much reminiscent of the Phillies last year. They got into the playoffs as the last seed. They fought their way through the gauntlet, and they're going against a Texas-based team in the World Series. They fought real hard, obviously. They wanted it more, and there was a line I saw someone say that I'll talk about later when we're discussing the final few games of this series. But yeah, man, congratulations to them. I'm sure they got some great players on that team, but I don't think for a second I'll be rooting for you, especially when the Rangers are looking for their first World Series, and you always like, for the most part, especially for me, and like one of my friends, you always like to root for the team who's never won it to try and get their first, because, especially as an Eagles fan, I can't put into words how special it is to watch your team win their first championship, especially after years and years of waiting and previous attempts, so there's that going for them. And then, of course, the Rangers got Adolis Garcia and Corey Seager. You can't ask me to root against that team, even if I tried, The only way I'd root against them is obviously if the Phillies were playing them in the World Series. But once again, congratulations to the Cardinals. Just looking at the series overall, man, like I said, it's just a lot of disappointment, a lot of things going wrong, and just a lot of untapped potential. It's just disappointing stuff. Things started off well, game one. We won 5-3, had a good showing from Wheeler. We got to Gallen early. I'll never forget this game, tuning in to watch it, and everyone kept saying Schwarber was due, and so I looked at my dad and I was like, Kyle Schwarber, first pitch, home run. And that's what he ends up doing. And then Harper, first pitch, also hits a home run. Castellanos had a home run in this game. Bryce Harper had a single that drove in Trey Turner. And then JT had a single that drove in Harper. But started off well, Wheeler in this game went 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, only 2 earned runs, and 1 home run allowed. And then game 2 was electric, It was a 10-0 win. Everyone was hitting this night, We saw home runs from Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, who had 2, I believe. We saw a lot of good base hitting. We saw a lot of doubles from guys, and pitching. He was continuing his good streak. 7 strikeouts, went 6 innings, only let up 3 hits, no earned runs. Aaron Nola, man, he was doing so great. But I kind of knew from that point on things would get a bit iffy. Like I said, I predicted this game was going to go 6. And obviously the Phillies just have this weird thing to them where they go out and they score 10 runs in a game, and then the next game they just extremely struggle. And what do we see? The next game, the Diamondbacks pull off the win, 2-1, and that obviously comes off of Craig Kimbrell just absolutely choking it away in the final inning. Absolutely terrible stuff. Then the next game, or hold on, wait, game 3, was this the one? Yes, this was the one against the Diamondbacks rookie pitcher, who the freaking Phillies just decided to make him look like a Cy Young candidate out there, with the way they played against him in both games. And then in the next game, things started off well. There was a home run from Kyle Schwarber. This was a bullpen game, definitely, and this was one of the confusing bits where it was like they went with Christopher Sanchez for only 2.1 innings, and then they went like extreme bullpen stuff, and it was just terrible, man. It was like, what is going on here, and then they throw Craig Kimbrell back out there after what he did the previous day, and he lets up, 3 earned runs, and you're just like, what is this team doing, and then the biggest thing was those guys couldn't throw a strike for the life of them, it was like, what are you guys doing in these games, we win the final game, we got to Zach Gallen again with home runs from Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, and JT, 1-6-1. You have the series advantage, you're taking it back home, and they lose 5-1. They don't even put in any effort in that win. It was like they gave up right away. It was just disgusting. The way they gave up in this game especially, and we'll talk about something else from this game very later on. But it forces a Game 7, the first Game 7 in Phillies history. They lose 4-2, and once again, they just laid down and took the loss, It's disappointing stuff. Ranger tried his hardest, 4.2 innings, let up 3 earned runs. Obviously, they let him bat against Corbin Carroll. And once again, it's one of those things where you're just like, I don't know if I would have made that decision. I might have pulled him before that. Who knows, man? Zach Wheeler came into this game, 1.2 innings, did pretty well. But, alas, like I said, Diamondbacks pulled it off in a very disappointing sort of finish for the Phillies. You start off 2-0 and you just lose like that. And almost no one came with any fight, and the best I saw someone put it was the Phillies came into this series expecting to win. The Diamondbacks came in wanting to win, and that really just sums it up, that these guys just didn't have any fight in them, especially after Game 2. It's just some pretty disappointing stuff overall, especially because of just, I don't know, man. Like, there's so many things that, like, some people would say it's hindsight, but also it's just, like, I'm just, like, frustrated with so many things from this team. Like, the biggest thing is Rob Thompson not wanting to change the lineup around, and people are saying, like, oh, you don't change your lineup and this and that, making excuses, and it's like, how many times did we see the Diamondbacks making changes to their lineup, swapping in different guys to pinch hit, moving guys around in the outfield, changing up the batting order, and yet here were the Phillies being complacent with their batting lineup once again, and it was just like, changes obviously needed to be made, but yet, they wouldn't make them. These guys kept swinging at pitches that weren't even close to touching the box. And I know at times the umps weren't the best, in the sense of like a lot of times what looked like a strike wasn't called a strike. What looked like a ball was called a strike. And this goes for both sides, There was some plays for the Diamondbacks where it's like, man, the Phillies got away with one right there. There was other plays where it was like, man, Diamondbacks got away with one right there, stuff like that. And you're just like, but the thing is, for the most part, it was just happening to both sides. It wasn't really that big of a disadvantage, so I won't go blaming umps. I'm never going to be a guy that blames the umps or the refs, But, you know, like I said, these guys were swinging at stuff that wasn't even close to touching the box. A lot of guys were swinging and trying to be aggressive from the start. And the biggest thing, because that's what this lineup is built to do, they were just swinging for the fences and not thinking, you know, we got to get, you know, these guys who are getting on base home. You know, we got to advance these guys. We got to get them home. They weren't thinking like that. You know, it was like all they kept thinking was we got to swing for the fences instead of, let me try and get a single here. Let me try and get a double here. Because that's what the difference was in those final few games was the Diamondbacks, they weren't hitting home runs. They were just driving their guys in whenever they got them on base, you know. And you just feel bad for a lot of different guys on this team that were actually showing that fight, you know, when these other guys pretty much gave up, you know. And some people might call it an emotional response and all that, you know, and other people might say, oh, it wasn't a factor, this and that, you know. But truthfully, man, you heard me talking about it all as we covered the playoffs, you know. You know, the whole thing of not talking even when you're up and all that and waiting till the job is finished. We headed to Arizona up 2-0, and you know, some people are gonna again claim it's an emotional response, make excuses, this and that, but there's absolutely no reason for Garrett Stubbs to be saying anything about beelining it for the pool. You know, I even told my dad when that first happened, I was like, why? You know, it's not like we're like such huge rivals with the Diamondbacks. You know, it's not like we have any hatred for them, or, you know, we're stuck in some rivalry with them. We're not even a division rival like the Dodgers or the Giants or the Padres, you know, where it's like it would make more sense for them to do that. It was like, why even make a comment like that? Why even give him material? And people will make excuses and say this and that about it, but like, I saw someone say something that, you know, very much just sounds true in the sense of like, if he's saying it, you know, that means that there are a lot of guys in that locker room that feel that way, just aren't saying it, but he's the one saying it. And it's like, there's no reason for that, you know. There's no reason to even give him material like that, because look what happened with Harper, you know. And that's why I think, you know, a lot of those Diamondbacks guys had a lot to prove to make sure they didn't, you know, finish it in their home, you know. And obviously there's a lot more things that contribute to it, like the bullpen, like certain guys like Kimbrel, you know, and, you know, certain hitters like Castellanos, like Rojas not being able to even just like get anything down in the game. Harper, Turner, and Schwarber were like 1 of 20, or not 1 of 20. I forget like what the stat was that they combined to be like in that final game and all that. Overall, it's just frustrating stuff. Alec Bohm made some great defensive plays, but when it came to batting, it was like the guy just couldn't do anything, you know. Like, he was supposed to be behind there protecting Harper, and he couldn't really do anything. And then all these people come in and being like, oh, in this game he was 2 for 4 and all that. And it's like, if you actually watched a lot of those plays, you would realize it wasn't like anything big, you know. It was infield hits and all that he was getting, and it was just like, it was disappointing stuff overall. Bryson Stott, you know, as much as I love the kid, you know, he wasn't that great, you know, especially like since like the Miami series. Really, he's really struggled, you know. Like, there's a lot of 1 hits, 0 hits, you know, in that scoreboard, and you're just like, come on, man. Like, you gotta expect more from him and Bohm, who were doing. And I mean, that's tough to expect from the younger guys. It's really what you want to expect from the veterans. But when those two were our main guys, you know, that were doing real good during the regular season, when guys were on base, like, that's why so many people were saying that's why Bohm's in the 4 slot. But you just didn't see any of it during the playoffs, you know. So it was extremely frustrating stuff to see. The biggest shouts I have to give out, number 1, Zach Wheeler, man. That's definitively our ace. That's our number 1 right there. Give that man however much money he wants. You know, I want that man to very much retire as a Philly. He went out there and gave his all this entire playoff run. You know, he did everything you wanted out of him, you know, and you just feel bad because he was one of the few guys that was really fighting this game. You know, he even went out there, Game 7, man. He didn't need to come out of the bullpen, you know, but he went in there to try and hold things down, and he was holding things down, and that offense just couldn't get nothing for him. Ranger, despite the tough loss in Game 7, the guy went out there and did everything you could ask for him in that spot, you know, to start Game 1 of the NLDS, you know, to no, he didn't start Game 1. No, you know, but he came in Game 3, and I know some of those games he lost, but like that guy did everything you could have asked for out of him in the spots that you put him in. Couldn't ask for any more out of the guy. And when it comes to hitting, you know, they had their bright spots, many different guys, but the only guy I really gotta shout out is Brandon Marsh, man. You know, it's not really a thing of bias, but it's just like out of everyone, that guy was getting on base a whole bunch, you know. He would get on base, he would get himself in scoring position, and not a single person wanted to bring him in. And it was just like, what are you doing, man? What are you guys doing out here, you know? Castellanos went 1 for 24 or something like that. Johan Rojas was 1 of 22. Or no, 3 of 22, sorry. But yeah, you know, out of a lot of those guys, it was like Marsh was the one getting on base the most. And, you know, he was really the only one that seemed like he was fighting, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you, especially because a lot of other people will tell you, like, he was just the main one fighting out there, man. And, you know, looking ahead to next season, there's going to be a lot of changes made, at least that I hope. I wouldn't be surprised if the Phillies act quick, and by that I mean that they learn from other teams and other sports and kind of think to themselves, you know, championship windows are short in different sports, and you need to make the best of them. And so whatever experiments you try, don't run them into the ground. Just try and move on as soon as possible. You know, you look at the Nets in basketball trying the experiments that they did, the Sixers and the experiments they tried, you know, where they just ran it to the ground. And it's just like, sometimes you gotta give up when you're ahead. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if they trade certain guys, you know, to try and get ahead, try and move pieces, to try something new, you know. I also wouldn't be surprised if they just kept everything the same way that they have been running it, you know, and just make certain changes like in the bullpen or, you know, starters wise, you know, with pitching, maybe swap some guys out when it comes to the lineup. Who really knows, you know? It's just obviously a tough loss to watch them sort of just lay down and give up, you know, and obviously it's a bit cruel, and obviously we don't know what goes on in the minds of these players, you know, but that's just how it comes off to the fans. Obviously the players themselves will feel different, but as the fan, you know, just watching it, it was like, I understand at times I can come off as really pessimistic, but like when it comes to Philly, man, I've learned better from these teams, you know, and so it was just disappointing, but it's expected at this point when it comes to Philly. You're used to a lot of disappointment, and the only thing that gives me sort of a clearer mind on it, you know, is that, hey, at least we made it this far. At least we made this much progress in 2 years, because some fans don't get to experience this, you know. Like, I got a friend who's a Broncos fan, man. That guy hasn't experienced happiness since 2015, you know. I think of all the Dodger fans who have experienced pain ever since, you know, whoever knows how long ago. It's like, and again, they're blessed in other fans' eyes where it's like, oh, I wish my team would win 100 games and get to the playoffs, you know. But that's just sort of the mindset I have. If you want to look at that as copium, go ahead. But like, that's the way I look at it. Where, you know, as I was like talking with my friends yesterday, like I said, my friend was like, "Hey man, at least you get to see your team in the playoffs," you know. So here's to looking towards next year. And the closing thing I just want to mention that I briefly talked about, or like I mentioned that we would talk about later. So obviously you're looking ahead. You're gonna want changes. You know, who knows what this team decides to do, what changes they decide. Obviously pitching is a very big one, and that's what I want to close this video out with. Now it could be a bit of an overreaction. I very much wouldn't be surprised if the team found a way to bring him back, as one of my friends was saying. Hell, he can even, you know, sign a prove it deal, you know, to like make up for what happened. But Aaron Nola, man. Aaron Nola. Been watching this guy with the Phillies for so long. Like I mentioned in previous videos, I have his jersey, man. He's the only jersey I have. I specifically picked him out of the bunch, and I think this was even during the time when they had just signed Harper, so I could have easily gone with Harper, but I was like, I've been watching Nola on the come up, man. I've been rooting for him. You've seen through all these various episodes talking about the Phillies how much I root for the guy and just want him to do better and all of that. And, you know, as a guy who has had to, you know, having to watch him basically, you know, get a ton of crap from the fan base for all his various ups and downs, you know, it was very sort of I don't really know what's the word to use, relieving in a sense, or I really don't know what word to use, but it was just, you know, it was nice to see that as he did good in the Miami game, in the Braves game, and even in game 2 of the NLCS, you know, to see so many fans back him up, you know, to see so many fans just give him his flowers for what he was doing, you know. I was mentioning it to my friend as I was like reading off the stats on him before game 6. I was like, dude, this guy's done amazing this playoff run. Under a 1 ERA, I think he had. He was striking guys out. He was doing real well. He was doing the one thing he hadn't done all season, and that was allowing home runs. You know, and it was just, it was so happy. I was so happy to just see him doing well and to finally get love from the fans, you know, who, you know, sure, you can look throughout the season, they'll give him love during, like, especially games he does good, but it always felt like backhanded, you know, like it was always like, oh yeah, good job on the mound, Nola. Can you do that every game, you know? Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you stop doing this? Like, it was just this thing of constantly getting flack, and I understand it, you know. I very much gave him my fair bits of criticism when he was having terrible games, when he was having these struggles, but, you know, I've stuck by with my guy. And so, you know, the thing that hurt the most from this loss, it wasn't losing to the Diamondbacks. They were a good team. I think a lot of people underestimated them, you know. It wasn't the bats going cold. It wasn't the bullpen blowing it. No, to me, it was like the most heartbreaking thing from this series that happened to me was just watching game 6, because it was like you saw that first inning and you were like, okay, man, he's looking good. It's going to be a repeat of what he's given us before. And then the home run, and then the home run, and I think he lets up like a double for a score or whatever. And like I said, man, it can be a bit of an overreaction, but just let me talk my heart out after this loss, man. I just sat there and I just felt so sad, because I was like, I quite possibly could have watched Aaron Nola's last game as a Philly, and it was that game. You know, not even anything's on a high note. Well, in a sense, you could maybe say it ended on a high note, in the sense that, like, after that, he settled down. He, you know, pitched his best and, you know, did decent. But it was like, I just sat there, I watched it, and almost in a sense was like, it's very fitting, man. Like, I just sat there sad. I'm like, that could quite possibly be Aaron Nola's last game as a Philly, and how bittersweet that, like, it just makes total sense that he goes all the way pitching a masterclass through the playoffs, and that's the game he's gonna finish on, and that's what sort of hurt me the most. And my dad has always been the optimistic fan, to just be like, we'll get him in the next game, or like it's just moving on to the next game. But me, it's like I sat there, I watched that Nola performance, and I was like, this isn't the team. This isn't the team to win it all, to make it to the very end of the finish line. Like I knew from that moment, I was like, it's over, and it just broke me at that point where I was just like, why does that have to be our last game with Nola? Like it was just very tough, and who knows? Who knows what the Phillies' plans are? Nola obviously wants to come back, but who knows? Like I said, change is sometimes needed even when it hurts, and again, could be a big overreaction, but to me it's just, I look at it and I'm like, maybe some other team looks at what he did before that game and gives him a bigger contract than the Phillies want to offer. Again, maybe he could do a prove-it deal. Maybe he asks for too much money and the Phillies aren't willing to give it. Who knows how things are going to play out, but like I said, I just expect some changes, and a part of me just feels like one of those changes is going to be Aaron Nola leaving, and that's just tough, man, because it's one of those things of like, you've been watching and supporting the guy for the longest, and it just sucks to see him leave. It's very much in the realm of Zach Ertz leaving Philadelphia, Brian Dawkins leaving Philadelphia, and I know in some of these cases a lot of people are going to be like, with some of the players you're naming, like it wasn't their choice or it was their choice, but like it's just the whole sentiment of, watching a guy who's been there for quite some time, and it especially hurts the most when it's like a guy you drafted, and like you've seen them, develop and come up through the team for years, and it's just one of those things of just like, it's gonna suck to see, man, but at this point it's a business and it's for whatever's best, and on to next year, I guess, and from here on out it's just all Eagles talk from here. I'm proud of the Phillies. One thing you can never take away is the memories from the season, but overall, thank you to all who have joined throughout the season of me, talking and discussing my feels. I'm glad for anyone who joins and listens. Moving on to just the Eagles' sole focus. One thing I forgot to mention in yesterday's episode, the Kelly Greens, beautiful uniforms. But full focus towards the Eagles now. And the next time we'll be talking about the Phillies is either any free agent decisions, but more than likely, gonna see y'all come spring training.